She tried to quit after that night, not knowing her boss was a billionaire in love. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. She stands completely still in the narrow bathroom of her apartment, staring at her reflection as if it belongs to someone else. The overhead light flickers once, then steadies. Her eyes look tired, not from lack of sleep alone, but from the weight of a decision she never imagined she would have to make. On the sink beside her lies a single sheet of paper, folded neatly, too neatly, her resignation letter. She exhales slowly, presses her palms against the porcelain, and closes her eyes. Last night was supposed to mean nothing, just another late work night, just another mistake swallowed quietly and forgotten. But nothing feels forgettable this morning. The apartment is small, less than 500 square feet. The radiator clicks softly, fighting the early morning chill. Outside, traffic hums and sirens echo somewhere down the block. The city is awake. Her world feels frozen. She smooths her hair back with shaking fingers and whispers to herself, "I cannot stay." Because staying would mean pretending that nothing crossed a line. And leaving feels like the only way to keep her dignity intact. She slips the letter into her worn tote bag, the same bag she has carried to work every day for the past 2 years. Inside it are ordinary things: a water bottle, a notebook, a cheap pen with the logo of a company picnic she barely remembers. Nothing about her life suggests drama. Nothing about her job was ever supposed to end like this. She works hard. She keeps her head down. She shows up early and leaves late. She learned long ago that people like her do not get second chances when rumors start. And rumors always start. Her phone buzzes on the kitchen counter. An email notification. Work-related. She does not open it. She cannot. Not yet. Instead, her mind pulls her backward. Not to the beginning of her job. Not to her first nervous day at the office. But to last night. The building was almost empty by the time it happened. The cleaning crew had already finished their rounds. The hallways were quiet. The city lights outside the windows reflected like distant stars. She remembers the silence more than anything. The kind of silence that makes you say things you never planned to say. She shakes her head sharply, forcing the memory away. "It was a mistake," she says out loud. "One night does not change who I am." But her heart does not believe her. Because this morning, when she woke up, the first thought that filled her chest was not fear. It was him, her boss. Not the man everyone else sees. Not the calm, reserved executive who keeps his office door open and his voice measured. Not the man who wears the same simple suits and drinks black coffee from a chipped mug. She saw something else last night. Something human. Something vulnerable. And that is exactly why she has to leave. She grabs her keys, pauses, then reaches back for the letter to make sure it is still there. It is. Real. Final. As she steps out into the hallway, she locks the door behind her with a soft click that sounds louder than it should, like punctuation at the end of a sentence she did not want to write. By the time she reaches the sidewalk, the morning air is sharp and cold. She pulls her coat tighter and starts walking toward the subway, each step carrying her closer to a goodbye she has not said yet. She does not know that across the city, in an office far above street level, a man is already awake. She does not know that he read her name on his schedule this morning and felt something close to panic. She does not know that while she is trying to disappear, he is trying to figure out how to make her stay. And she has no idea that the man she is about to quit on is not just her boss. He is a billionaire, and he is already in love. She keeps walking, even after she passes the subway entrance. Normally, she would already be underground by now, squeezed between strangers, rehearsing her to-do list for the day. Today, she keeps moving, as if distance itself might steady her thoughts. This is what her life has always looked like: motion, survival, forward momentum without pause. She grew up learning how to be invisible, not in the tragic sense people like to dramatize, but in the quiet, practical way. The kind that teaches you not to ask for help unless you absolutely have to. The kind that tells you mistakes are expensive, especially when you do not come from money. Her job mattered because it was stable. Health insurance, a predictable paycheck, a chance, however small, to build something that did not disappear overnight. She remembers her first day at the company clearly. She arrived 30 minutes early, clutching a cheap folder with copies of her resume, even though they already had everything. Her shoes pinched. Her palms were damp. She kept reminding herself to breathe. The building felt intimidating back then. Glass, steel, and silence. The kind of place where people walked with purpose and spoke in low, confident tones. She was not supposed to belong there. She knew that. And yet, she tried anyway. Over time, she learned the rhythms of the office. Who liked their coffee strong? Who avoided small talk? Which meetings ran long? Which ones mattered? And then there was him, her boss. From the beginning, he was different from what she expected. No loud authority, no flashy displays of power. He did not raise his voice. He did not demand attention. Most days, he looked almost ordinary. He arrived early. He left late. He ate lunch at his desk, or not at all. He thanked people by name. When something went wrong, he asked questions instead of assigning blame. She told herself not to think too much about him. Thinking led to noticing. Noticing led to attachment. And attachment led to disappointment. So she kept things professional, polite, safe. Until last night. The office had been tense all week. A deadline moved up without warning. A project that suddenly carried more weight than anyone expected. Everyone stayed late. The air felt tight, charged with pressure. When the last of the team finally left, she stayed behind to finish one last report. She did not want to be the weak link. She never did. She remembers hearing footsteps behind her and turning, expecting the cleaning crew. It was him. He asked if she was all right, not as a boss checking progress, but as a person checking another person. That was the first crack. The conversation drifted, slowly at first. Work, then something lighter, then silence again. The comfortable kind, the dangerous kind. She does not replay the details because the details are not the problem. The problem is how safe she felt, how seen, how, for a moment, she forgot the rules she had lived by for years. This morning, those rules came rushing back. She finally turns around and heads toward the subway entrance, descending the steps as the city swallows her whole. The train screeches into the station, loud and unforgiving. As she rides downtown, she grips the metal pole and stares at her reflection in the dark window. She looks like someone who has not slept, someone carrying more than a bag and a resignation letter. At the same time, several floors above the city, her boss sits alone in his office. He has been awake since before sunrise, staring at the same email without opening it. Her name sits there, quiet and unassuming, like she always is. He tells himself it is none of his business, that whatever happened last night was mutual, complicated, best forgotten. But the thought of her walking away without explanation tightens something in his chest that he does not recognize immediately. He is used to control, used to people staying because of the job, the opportunity, the prestige. He is not used to wanting someone to stay for reasons he cannot quantify. As the morning wears on, the office begins to fill. Voices echo, phones ring. The day resumes its normal pace. But for both of them, something has already shifted. She believes leaving is the only way to protect herself. He is starting to realize that letting her go might be the first decision he truly regrets. Neither of them knows yet how much the truth, when it comes, will change everything. By mid-morning, the city has fully shaken itself awake. Inside the headquarters building, sunlight spills across polished floors and glass walls, catching reflections of people who move with purpose. Meetings begin on schedule. Assistants carry tablets. Coffee machines hum without pause. From the outside, everything looks exactly the same. But inside his office, he sits very still. Her boss loosens his tie and sets it carefully on the desk, as if the smallest order might help him think. He stands, then sits again. The email with her name remains unopened on his screen. For years, this routine has worked for him. Keep things simple, keep things quiet, keep people at a distance. He built his life that way on purpose. Long before the company reached its current size, before magazines started using words like visionary and elusive, he learned what money changed in people. He learned how quickly admiration turned artificial, how conversations shifted once net worth entered the room. So he stopped mentioning it. He wore the same tailored but understated suits. He drove himself. He skipped charity galas unless attendance was unavoidable. Inside the company, he let others take credit when they deserved it. He wanted to be treated like a man who worked hard, not a billionaire who owned everything. It worked, mostly. People respected him, but they did not hover. They did their jobs. They kept their boundaries. And then she arrived. She did not know anything about his background. She did not need to. She never asked. She spoke to him the same way she spoke to everyone else. Clear, direct, careful, but honest. When she brought him reports, she did not flatter. When she disagreed, she did so quietly, with facts. When she stayed late, it was because the work needed to be done, not because he was watching. At first, he noticed her the way a manager notices competence. Then, he noticed her kindness. The way she covered for a coworker without drawing attention. The way she stayed calm under pressure. The way she apologized even when things were not her fault. He told himself not to read into it. She was an employee. He was her boss. That line mattered. Last night blurred it. Not because of anything dramatic, but because of how natural it felt. How easy the conversation became once titles disappeared and silence filled the space between them. This morning, that ease feels dangerous. A knock sounds at the door. His assistant steps in, clipboard in hand, listing meetings for the day. He listens, nods, answers automatically. When she leaves, the office feels too quiet again. He opens the email. It is short, polite, professional, written in the same careful tone she uses for everything. She thanks the company for the opportunity. She apologizes for the inconvenience. She says she believes it is best for everyone if she steps away, effective immediately. There is no explanation, no accusation, no emotion, just distance. He exhales slowly and leans back in his chair. For the first time in a long while, money does not give him an answer. He could accept it. Let her go quietly. No disruption, no risk. That would be the easiest choice. But the thought of never hearing her voice in the hallway again, of never seeing her sit at her desk with that focused crease between her brows, settles heavily in his chest. He realizes something then, something uncomfortable. He did not just enjoy last night. He cared, and caring means consequences. Across the city, she emerges from the subway and steps into the flow of pedestrians near the office building. She adjusts the strap of her tote bag and checks the time. She is early, as always. Her heart pounds as she approaches the entrance, the resignation letter folded carefully inside. She tells herself she will hand it in, thank human resources, and leave without drama. She does not know that upstairs, her boss has already made a decision. Not about money, not about power, but about whether hiding who he is has already cost him something real. As the elevator carries her upward, neither of them realizes how close they are to the moment when everything they believe about control, honesty, and love will be tested. The office grows quieter as the evening settles in. By the time most of the lights dim automatically, only a handful of floors remain illuminated. Outside the windows, the city stretches wide and restless, headlights tracing thin lines through the dark. She sits at her desk, fingers moving steadily across the keyboard, finishing the last section of the report she promised herself she would complete. She could leave it for the morning at Tog, but she never does. She has completely showing around. She have a standing a blessed and waiting to this. She has described, but also have any value for she for the gum. She professor believe. She has the same point, but she need to complete that latest workshire shit. She could leave it for the morning a mine, but she never does. She has the pleasure than always the feature, and mostly would plant. She could leave it for the morning among, but she never does like that. She has the fact that are listened. The city could believes in the morning alone. She could leave it, and she could have response. She sits at her desk. She could leave it for the morning, and she never does. She has the pleasure than waiting to this. She sits the other perform, but she never does the feature. She has to figure out the proche and the place the general section of the way. She has the moment freakly with that fids. Let's see. She could leave it for the morning, and she never does. She has the frequence about it. She could leave it for the morning, and she never does. She sits at her desk, but she never does the feature brain. She has the joke, and she has the flexure than waiting to this. She should maybe like that ready sitch out. She sits well, but she never does that which would set. She sits at the desk, but she never does. She has the morning a blent, but she never does themselves. The first thing, she take a mention the rest, but she provided to translicate its quickly before the morning. But she take the company, and she sits at the changes read away. She sits at way. She sits the chiefs to mention, and then she could be managed in morning. She sits the time, but she would seek around. She sits at really just effect at the changes, and she sits a future before, but she never does the morning. She sits at that. She could be finished the law. She could leave it. It's a very success that we're closely, but she could may accept them of the change. She sits atop. She sits a little close of the entire self. She sits a really close, but she could leave it all. She of the sun like this will discussing. She sits the brick of these part of way. She sits at some close. She sits the burden, and she sits the fid. She sits a back in which she said. She sits the first time that she could respond. She sits a close through them. She sits a little close, but she sits the top, and she sits the law. She sits the best that were closely enough to them. She sits a good close, but she could seek around, but she didn't see how close them. But she sits the junks, and she looks that true. She sits a friend. She sits a lung, but she could see how close, but she did see how close. She has the people mind and fears, but she could leave them for feministly in the new question, but she could seat you with 16 plus. She sits at study, and the post of it particular, but she could see the points of themselves, and she sits the beat. She sits a two study, but she could see the puncible protect of it. She sits a toward of the message, which she could see if you would seem towards the light. She sits a little more too longs in head, but she need to be pressively. She sits a place that the open said, but she could see that true. She sits a brink, but she could see the multiple true. She sits of 2012. She sits a really closely themself. She sits a little business of message of crap. She sits a place, but she could see the form of place, and she sits a place. But she could see the form of place, and she sits a plistily from themselves. She sits a critical nextly, but she could see the form of place, but she could see the places. She sits a place, but she could see the truth is, but she could see the bottom of my mind. She sits a place, but she could see the 20 place, but she could see the true, but she could see the private place, but she could see the true. She sits a two, realizes herself she would does. She has learned that reliability is her shield. Her shoulders ache, her eyes sting from staring at the screen too long. Still, she keeps going. A soft sound breaks the silence. Footsteps, measured, familiar. She looks up. He stands a few feet away, jacket draped over his arm, sleeves rolled just enough to suggest he had been working as long as she had. For a moment, neither of them speaks. "I thought everyone had left," he says finally. "Almost," she replies. "I just wanted to finish this." He nods, glancing at the document on her screen. "You did not have to stay." "I know," she says, "but I wanted to." That is how it begins. Not dramatically, not intentionally. Just two people sharing the same quiet space after a long day. He asks about the report. She explains her approach, careful and precise. He listens, genuinely interested. When she finishes, he does not correct her. He thanks her. The word lands differently than it should. He pulls out a chair across from her desk and sits, loosening the tension in his shoulders. For the first time all day, neither of them is rushing. Minutes pass, then more. The conversation drifts away from work without either of them noticing. A comment about the late hour. A shared frustration about deadlines that move without warning. A quiet laugh when the lights flicker and steady again. The office feels smaller, warmer. She tells herself to keep it professional, but professionalism does not explain why she stays seated when she could leave, or why she answers when he asks how she is really doing. "I am fine," she starts, then stops. The word feels hollow. She exhales. "I am tired." "So am I," he admits. That honesty opens something neither of them planned to unlock. She talks about the pressure of always having to prove herself, about growing up knowing one mistake could undo everything, about learning to stay quiet even when it cost her. He listens without interrupting, without fixing, without offering solutions. When he speaks, his voice is lower, thoughtful. He talks about expectations, about being surrounded by people but rarely known by them, about how lonely leadership can be when everyone assumes strength means distance. The silence that follows is not awkward. It is heavy, intimate. At some point, she realizes she no longer feels like an employee sitting across from her boss. She feels like a person being seen, fully, clearly. That realization scares her. She stands abruptly. "I should go." He does not argue. He simply nods and stands with her. As they walk toward the elevator, the hum of the building surrounds them. The doors open. They step inside. The ride down is quiet, their reflections faint in the mirrored walls. When the elevator stops, neither of them moves right away. She turns to him, searching for the right words to put the moment back where it belongs. Professional, contained. But before she finds them, he speaks. "I am glad you stayed," he says. Not as her boss, as himself. Something shifts. She feels it like a line being crossed, not by action, but by truth. She looks down, then back up. "So am I," she replies, surprised by how much she means it. They part at the lobby. No promises, no physical closeness, just a look that lingers a second too long. That night, she lies awake in her apartment, staring at the ceiling, replaying the quiet moments instead of the words. wondering when exactly things stopped feeling simple. Across the city, he sits alone with a glass of water untouched on the counter, realizing that what unsettled him was not temptation, it was connection, and connection, once felt, cannot be undone. Morning arrives without mercy. She wakes before her alarm, heart already racing, the events of last night pressing down on her chest the moment her eyes open. For a few seconds, she lies still, staring at the cracked ceiling, hoping the feeling will fade. It does not. The memory of the office, the quiet conversation, the way his voice sounded when he said he was glad she stayed. It all feels too close, too personal, too dangerous. She sits up and swings her legs over the side of the bed. The floor is cold, real, grounding. She needs that reminder. This is not a romance. This is not a story with room for mistakes. This is her job, her livelihood. She showers quickly, dresses carefully, choosing neutral colors, the kind that help her blend in. Nothing about her appearance should invite attention today. She ties her hair back, takes a breath, and reaches for her bag. Inside, the resignation letter waits. She rereads it one last time before leaving. The words are clean, respectful, impossible to argue with. She has practiced this kind of exit in her head for years, just in case. By the time she reaches the office, the building is already alive. Elevators chime, voices carry down the hall. The normal rhythm of the day tries to convince her that nothing has changed. She knows better. At her desk, she logs in, answers emails, finishes tasks she could easily leave behind. She wants no loose ends, no reason for anyone to question her professionalism. Her heart skips every time she hears footsteps nearby. When she finally stands, resignation letter in hand, her legs feel unsteady. She tells herself this is what strength looks like, walking away before the situation can define her. She steps into his office doorway. He looks up, surprise flickering across his face before he schools his expression. "Do you need something?" "Yes," she says, her voice steadier than she feels. She crosses the room and places the envelope on his desk. "I am resigning." The words hang between them. He does not reach for the letter right away. His gaze moves from the envelope to her face, searching. Why? She had prepared for this question. She sticks to the truth she can safely share. "It is best for everyone." "That is not an answer," he says quietly. She meets his eyes, forcing herself not to look away. "I crossed a line, and I will not let it happen again." His jaw tightens. He finally picks up the letter, glances at it, then sets it back down unopened. "You are not in trouble," he says. "I know," she replies, "but I cannot stay." There is no accusation in her tone, no blame, only resolve. He stands, moving slowly, as if sudden motion might shatter something fragile. "You do not have to decide this today." "I already have," she says. For a moment, neither of them speaks. The office feels too quiet, too exposed. Outside the glass walls, people move, unaware that something is breaking just a few feet away. She straightens her shoulders. "Thank you for everything." Then she turns and walks out. The sound of her footsteps fades down the hallway. He remains standing long after she leaves, staring at the unopened letter on his desk. Something tightens in his chest, unfamiliar and unwelcome. This is not how things are supposed to go. He is used to people staying, used to control, used to outcomes he can predict. Her choice disrupts all of that. He sits down slowly and exhales. For the first time, he understands that hiding who he is may have protected him from false affection, but it has also cost him the chance to be honest when it mattered most. And as he stares at the letter she left behind, one thought becomes impossible to ignore. If he lets her walk away now, he may never forgive himself. Because what she sees as a mistake, he already knows was something real, and he is not ready to lose her without a fight. The conference room is already full when she steps inside. She almost turns around. The space feels different from the offices she knows, larger, colder. A long table stretches across the room, surrounded by men and women in tailored suits, their voices low and confident. A wall of glass looks out over the city, the skyline sharp and distant. This is not her world. She was told there was a brief meeting, a formality before her departure. She expected human resources, maybe a manager she barely knows. She did not expect this. She takes a seat near the end of the table, clutching her tote bag tightly in her lap. Her resignation letter is no longer inside. It already sits on his desk upstairs, like a decision waiting to be confirmed. The room quiets when he enters, her boss. He looks the same as always, calm, controlled, dressed simply. No grand entrance, no announcement, just his presence, steady and undeniable. He takes his place at the head of the table. The meeting begins with numbers, quarterly performance, expansion plans, words that float past her without landing. She listens politely, confused about why she is here at all. Then she hears it, his full name, not spoken casually, but with weight, respect. A title that does not match the man she thought she knew. Before we continue, someone says, I would like to acknowledge our Chief Executive Officer. Her breath catches. Chief Executive Officer. She looks around the table, searching faces for confirmation. No one looks surprised. No one looks uncertain. They all look toward him with familiarity and deference. He meets her eyes, just for a second. And in that second, the room tilts. She feels it all at once. The late nights, the understated suits, the way people moved aside for him without thinking, the access, the silence that always followed him. Billionaire. The word slams into her chest, heavy and unforgiving. He continues the meeting as if nothing has changed. His voice is steady. His presence commands the room. Decisions are made quickly, efficiently, without question. She barely hears any of it. Her mind races, replaying every interaction. Every moment she believed she was speaking to a man who understood her position because he lived close to it. She was wrong. When the meeting ends, chairs scrape softly against the floor. People gather their things and file out, nodding respectfully as they pass him. She stays seated. Her hands are trembling now, no matter how hard she tries to steady them. When the door closes behind the last executive, the room feels too big, too quiet. Why did you not tell me? She asks. The question slips out before she can stop it. Her voice is low, but it carries. He does not answer immediately. He stands slowly and walks toward the window, hands clasped behind his back. Because it changes everything, he says finally. She laughs once, sharp and humorless. It already has. He turns to face her. There is no arrogance in his expression, no triumph, only something that looks dangerously close to regret. I did not lie, he says. I never pretended to be something I was not. You let me believe you were ordinary, she replies. You let me speak freely. You let me trust you. Her voice cracks on the last word. He takes a step closer, then stops, as if remembering the distance he must keep. I wanted to know who stayed when money was not part of the equation. And I was your test? She asks. No, he says firmly. You were never a test. She stands abruptly, the chair legs scraping loudly against the floor. Then what was I? The question hangs between them. He exhales slowly. Someone I did not expect. Someone real. Her chest tightens. Anger mixes with hurt, with something dangerously close to betrayal. She shakes her head. I cannot do this. I cannot work for someone who watched me struggle while knowing exactly how much power he had. That was never my intention, he says. But it was the result, she replies. She grabs her bag and heads for the door. At the threshold, she pauses, her back to him. I meant it when I said I had to leave, she says quietly. Now I know why. Then she walks out, leaving him alone in the room where his truth finally caught up with him. For the first time, his wealth feels less like protection and more like a wall that has cost him the one thing he did not know he wanted so badly. She does not make it to the elevator. The sound of hurried footsteps echoes behind her, controlled at first, then unmistakably faster. Wait. His voice stops her. She stands still in the hallway, fingers tightening around the strap of her tote bag. For a moment, she considers pretending she did not hear him. Walking away would be easier, cleaner. But she turns. He is a few steps behind her now, no executives in sight, no conference room walls to hide behind, just two people standing in a quiet corridor, where the power imbalance suddenly feels exposed. I am not asking you to stay, he says carefully. I am asking you to let me explain. She folds her arms across her chest, not defensive but protective. You already did. No, he replies. I told you the reason. I did not tell you the truth behind it. She exhales sharply. Then say it. He hesitates, and that hesitation matters. It tells her this is not rehearsed, not polished. I grew up learning that money changes how people see you, he says. How they treat you. How quickly interest turns into expectation. So I built a life where my work spoke for itself, and my name did not. She shakes her head. That does not excuse what you did. I know, he says. That is why I am not asking for forgiveness. The hallway feels too narrow now, the walls too close. You watched me worry about rent, she says quietly. You listened while I talked about being one mistake away from losing everything, and you said nothing. His jaw tightens. Because the moment I told you, you would stop being honest with me. She lets out a bitter laugh. You took away my choice. Yes, he admits, and that is on me. The words land heavier because he does not soften them. For a moment, she sees something new in him. Not the boss, not the billionaire. A man standing inside a mistake he cannot undo. Do you know what hurts the most? She asks. It is not the money. It is realizing that the one place I thought I was safe was built on a lie. He nods slowly. I understand why you are leaving. Then let me go, she says. I will, he replies, if that is what you choose. She studies him, searching for manipulation, for pressure, for the subtle pull of power. She finds none. What if I stay? She asks. What happens then? Then I step back, he says. I recuse myself from any decision that affects your role. You report to someone else. Your career remains yours. She blinks, caught off guard. And if you leave? She presses. Then you leave with your reputation intact, he says, and with my word that nothing that happened will follow you. Silence stretches between them. She had expected him to fight harder, to offer money, to offer protection, to make promises. Instead, he offers boundaries. I do not want your power, she says softly. I know, he replies. That is why I fell in love with you. The words hit her like a sudden drop. He does not move closer, does not reach for her. He simply stands there, vulnerable in a way she did not think possible. I am not asking you to love me back, he continues. I am asking you not to disappear because of who I am. Her chest tightens. Every instinct tells her to leave, to protect herself the way she always has. But another part of her, quieter and more dangerous, remembers the man who listened in the dark office without judgment. I need time, she says. He nods immediately. Take it. She turns toward the elevator again, this time without running. As the doors close, she watches his reflection disappear. For the first time since writing the resignation letter, she does not know what she will choose. And for the first time in his life, he understands that love is not something money can secure. It is something that must be earned, even if the cost is losing her. The days that follow move slower than she expects. She takes time off work, not officially gone, not officially staying, just enough distance to think. Her apartment feels smaller now, the walls too close, the silence too loud. She keeps herself busy with errands she does not need to run, walks she does not plan, meals she barely tastes. At night, sleep comes in fragments. She replays the hallway conversation again and again. Not his wealth, not the reveal, but the way he stepped back instead of forward, the way he offered her choices instead of solutions. That unsettles her more than any display of power could have. She has spent her life bracing for pressure, for demands disguised as generosity, for people who help only when it benefits them. He did not do that. On the third morning, her phone vibrates. A message. Not from him. It is from the head of human resources. Short, professional, neutral. She is informed that effective immediately, she has been reassigned to a different department, reporting to a senior director she barely knows. Same salary, same benefits, same trajectory, no mention of last week, no mention of rumors, no strings. She stares at the screen for a long moment. Then another message arrives. Still not from him. It is an email forwarded by Human Resources, sent company-wide earlier that morning. A formal announcement. He has voluntarily stepped down from direct oversight of several internal teams to eliminate any potential conflicts of interest. Authority redistributed. Processes reviewed. Transparency emphasized. There is no explanation beyond that. She exhales slowly, her chest tight with something she does not want to name. This is not a gesture meant for applause. This costs him control. Later that afternoon, she walks past the office building without meaning to. Her feet slow, then stop. She stands across the street, watching employees move in and out, just like any other day. She realizes something then. If he wanted to force her hand, he could have. If he wanted to buy silence, he would have offered money. If he wanted to protect himself, he would have done nothing at all. Instead, he chose restraint. That night, she returns to the office for the first time since the meeting. Not to see him, to clear out a few personal items from her desk before officially starting in her new department. The floor is quiet again, familiar. She moves carefully, placing notebooks into her bag, pausing when she finds a sticky note she once wrote herself, reminding her to breathe before presentations. When she turns, she sees him standing several feet away, not in her doorway, not blocking her path, waiting. "I did not expect to see you tonight," she says. "I did not expect you to come back," he replies honestly. They stand there, a respectful distance between them. "I saw the announcement," she says. He nods. "It was necessary." "You did not have to do that," she says. "I did," he replies, "because it was the right thing to do, regardless of what you decide." She studies him closely, searching for regret, for resentment. She finds none. "What happens now?" she asks. "That depends on you," he says, as it always should have. Silence settles between them again, softer this time. "I am not ready to pretend nothing happened," she says. "I would never ask you to," he answers. "I am also not ready to walk away," she admits. He does not smile. He does not move closer. He simply nods. "That is enough," he says. For the first time since that night, she feels something steady take root in her chest. Not certainty, but trust beginning to rebuild. Slowly, carefully, on equal ground. The weeks that follow are quiet in the way that matters. No rumors surface. No whispers trail her through the halls. In her new department, she is treated the same way she always hoped to be treated. Valued for her work, trusted for her judgment, left alone to prove herself on her own terms. He keeps his distance, not out of fear, out of respect. When they pass each other in shared spaces, there is a nod, a brief smile. Nothing that invites speculation, nothing that crosses the line she asked him to honor. And that restraint does more than any declaration ever could. Over time, something inside her settles. She stops bracing for consequences, stops waiting for the other shoe to drop. She begins to believe that maybe this time, leaving did not mean losing everything. One evening, long after the office has emptied, she finishes a presentation and shuts down her computer. As she stands to leave, she notices the city outside the windows, glowing softly in the dark. She feels proud, not because of him, not because of where she works, but because she stayed true to herself. Her phone buzzes as she steps into the elevator. A message. From him. Not urgent, not demanding, just a question. "Would you like to have coffee this weekend? No work, no expectations. If not, I will understand." She stares at the screen for a long moment. Then she types back, "Yes, I would like that." They meet on neutral ground, a small cafe tucked between a bookstore and a laundromat. No reserved table, no assistant nearby, just two people sitting across from each other, learning how to speak without power in the room. They talk slowly, carefully, about boundaries, about trust, about the fear of being misunderstood. He listens the way he always did, but now without secrets between them. She realizes something then. Love did not arrive with grand gestures or wealth or promises. It arrived with accountability, with the willingness to lose control, with the courage to let someone walk away and still choose to show up with honesty. When they leave the cafe, they walk side by side, not touching, not rushing. There is no need. Some connections do not need to be claimed loudly to be real. Months later, when people finally notice them together, it does not come as a shock. There is no scandal, no dramatic reveal. Just two people who chose each other when it would have been easier not to. She never became his employee again. She became his equal. And he never saved her. He stood beside her. In the end, the billionaire learned what his money never taught him. That love is not proven by what you can give. It is proven by what you are willing to give up. And she learned that walking away does not always mean losing. Sometimes, it is how you make room for something honest to begin.